President Trump setting the stage for a trade deal with China as the administration says they could scale back on some of the new tariffs soon.
Hurry. Mark Meredith is at the White House with details. Mark, have the conversations with China actually started? Because it sounds like things are heading that way.
Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, good morning, friends. Well, Steve, the White House was asked yesterday whether or not the president's engaged in a one-on-one talk with President Xi of China, and the White House not willing to go on the record with that, an indication that these conversations are still not happening at the most senior levels. Either way, all three major U.S. stock indexes are set to open sharply higher today, given some of the news the president and Treasury Secretary made within the last 24 hours, suggesting that the trade war won't last forever. As you all three know, there's been a major sell-off on Wall Street ever since the trade war began.
We're doing fine with China. We're doing fine with I think almost every country. Everybody wants to have involvement with the United States. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. We were talking about fentanyl, where, various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero.
As Fox Business has learned, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also said something similar to investors this week, that he expects a de-escalation with China in the near future. 2 weeks ago, the White House also pushed pause on imposing sweeping tariffs on almost every U.S. trading partner. It allowed this pause to allow negotiations to continue. So far, though, no new trade deals have been signed, and the White House says stay tuned.
I spoke to our entire trade team this morning. There is a lot of progress being made. We now have 18 proposals on paper that have been brought to the trade team. Again, these are proposals on paper that countries have proposed to the Trump administration and to our government.
The other reason we're seeing so much green on Wall Street before the opening bell is the president made the strong suggestion again that he has no plans to fire the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Just this week, Trump suggested that Powell should have to leave his post as Federal Reserve Chairman. His post isn't up until May of next year. And so there was that suggestion that maybe Trump would try to push him out of the job. But Trump said last night that he no longer feels that is the case. But of course, he wants to see interest rates brought down sooner rather than later. Excuse me. Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, back to you guys.
Yeah, the market seemed to like that. So any sense that there'll be any progress made? Because Norway comes this week. Don't they want a trade deal too?
Well, the White House has been very clear, Brian, that they believe that everybody who's been on that hit list of the different tariffs will want to make a deal at some point. You had the vice president in India talking about trade as well and how to develop a further U.S.-Indian relationship. But in terms of actually getting these deals signed, there's a question about timing because they have to be worked out. It's not that it could just be, written on a napkin and go. There's a lot of complicated language here. And the White House has said simply that their team is working on it. But as lawmakers have been talking about, they want to see progress quickly.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. This is great news for China. Scott Bessent was at a J.P. Morgan event in Washington, D.C., talking to investors, and he says he expects a de-escalation in the trade war between the U.S. and China. He said no one thinks that the current status quo is sustainable because right now we have the 125% reciprocal tariffs on imports from China, in addition to those 20% tariffs on Chinese goods to curb the flow of fentanyl into the United States.
So one of the things that the White House is asking from all the countries is, okay, if you want to make a deal with us, you got to make a deal with us that you're not going to deal with China. And there are a number of countries that are pushing back on that. In fact, the EU has just come back and they said they will not decouple from China. They said talks with the United States and relations with China are two distinct matters. What the president is trying to do is he's trying to get so many people and countries around China to isolate China so that he's got better negotiation, better leverage with China. But right now, we don't know how many countries are saying, okay, if I have to pick between one or the other, I'll go with the United States. We don't know how many.
That's what China said on Monday. They said we're going to threaten countries not to do deals with us, and it hasn't stopped Japan, hasn't stopped South Korea, has not stopped India, obviously hasn't stopped India. It didn't stop Italy, who feels as though they could spearhead an EU deal. I think it's really encouraging to see things get reconfigured. But I also don't think we should show any weakness with China. This is the moment we stare them down. We have lost a lot of market cap in doing this. Let's make sure we get what we want in this restructuring, and one of which they cannot steal intellectual property. The other thing is they can't continue to hijack and screw up our patents. They steal our products, they rename them, and then they sell them back to us. Yes. Amazon, 2/3 of all their products are China. So now They're now standing up. Now they're worried about their tech center, who they suppressed for so long. Now they're starting to prop up Alibaba. They rehab Jack Ma. So now they're desperate to try to get their economy going. I'd hate to think that in the end, we blinked.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.